The following segment is sponsored by El Tigre Silver Corp., trading on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol ELS.V and on the OTCQX as EGRTF. El Tigre Silver Corp. Is focused on silver exploration and development in prolific Sonora State, Mexico. Find them on the web at eltigresilvercorp.com. Join me for a conversation with a frequent guest of the show, David Morgan, the Silver Guru, an expert on money, metals, and mining, also a lecturer and an author. Mr. Morgan has written Get the Skinny on Silver Investing, available on Amazon.com. His website is themorganreport.com. David, welcome back to the program.
Great to be with you, Ellis.
There's been some serious discussion in Spain as of late, which is on the verge of what appears to be a collapse, with talks of separation into three separate republics, Catalonia, the Basque region, and the rest of Spain becoming something else. I'm not even sure that's a real story, but apparently it is. Are the straits in Europe much more dire than they are in the U.S., and what can we expect to see over the next few years, in your opinion?
Well, I think we're going to see more of the same. What happens to Spain, obviously none of us know for sure, but the idea of centralization versus decentralization, and that's the overall theme that I want to talk about. We see more and more grasping of power and control by the elite status. You've got, the United States all over the world basically doing military operations, most of them not asked for and unwanted by the populations and nation states that we have basically intruded. And then for the consolidation of monetary affairs, the euro was floated several years ago, and it's fallen apart. And so we're really seeing the reality of decentralization, where within a country, as you said, Spain as an example, has three different factions. And this is true of many places in the world, where you have the Middle East, for example, you have the Sunnis and the Shiites. They don't get along, and they would much prefer different boundaries than what were arbitrarily drawn by some of the powers that be at the time after the First and Second World War. I think we're going to see the euro fall apart eventually. I think sooner than 2 years, whether it's Spain that opts out or Greece that opts out or people that refuse to use it or start using a local currency or whatever, I'm not certain. But what I am certain is that this thing can't last for much longer, and it's going to cause all kinds of problems. Here in the United States, the whole federation is about using one currency. I mean, the idea of the several states at the beginning was each state had states' rights which were superior to the federal government's rights, but the federal government did get some of the rights to have a currency that was under Congress's command until, of course, they gave that up late December 1913 and turned it over to a private corporation, the Federal Reserve. But the point being is everyone looks at this power grab as being the modality of the future. In other words, more and more one world currency and more power going to the elites and the populace suffering more and more. And I see it as that's what they intend, but the actual reality is it's going the other direction. You're seeing more and more decentralization. You're seeing more and more populations across the globe that are putting up protests, getting out in the streets and protesting, and they're losing control. So my look at it is the power play has run its course, it's peaked, and it's falling apart. Although for the mainstream media and all the brave new world that we live in, all the mainstream media is certainly going to paint a picture that's not true, which is going to suggest that, the power mongers are still in charge and, you must step in line and salute and all that stuff.
What's the outcome of the decentralization of Europe?
First, it could go any direction. Normally, it goes more chaotic at the beginning. But actually, if people are absolutely left alone and able to come to their own devices and really be free or freer, it settles down pretty quickly, and business actually gets better, and people are happier, they're more content, they have more freedom, and they have less intrusion in their lives. The problem is, for Europe and the United States, is that so many people have been so dependent for so long, and this was true of Russia when it broke apart, that they don't know anything else. They can't think outside of the box. They don't really know what it means to be independent. And unfortunately, they are so dependent that they think they prefer to have a reality. It's sort of like the movie The Matrix. I mean, in a way, The Matrix had a lot of reality in it. And one of them is that people get dependent. They think they're free. They are not. But when it comes to the bottom line, choose the red pill or choose the blue pill, a lot of people choose the blue pill because they don't want the responsibility of being free or having responsibility. Because in that situation, you are responsible for yourself and your own decisions. Whereas in a dependent situation, you can always say, well, if we just tax the rich more, I would get more, and all this nonsense that's going on now, but people believe it. They believe things that aren't true.
Speaking of taxing the rich, France is imposing their 75% tax on the wealthy coming up in January. How's that possibly going to spur their economy?
I can't. Socialism always fails. You cannot live off of your brother forever, because if your brother goes broke, then you're broke as well, and that's what's happening. I have a good friend that's a very big silver bull, has been from the beginning, that left a very successful business in Paris. He left a few years ago because he saw it coming. He's very aware. He's in Belgium now. And you're going to see more and more of that. It's coming down to the end where governments are failing. That's the main premise, is that, what happens when a nation state fails, and what people don't seem to grasp, and some do, of course, is that when a nation state fails, the only ability of a nation state to gain all the power is to be able to extract wealth from the populace and give it to another part of the populace. And right now, when things are deteriorating at the rate that they are, especially in areas such as the Eurozone, you can't extract wealth that doesn't exist. So there's less of the pie to share with everybody. So even though the political scene is, we'll just tax more and tax more and tax more, and we'll have more to give you, the reality is there's less and less to get. And they're scrambling for the last slice of pie, and it's shrinking. And the political class will not give it to the populace, although that's what they'll say. They'll keep it for themselves. It's very similar to what happened at the end of the Roman Empire. Basically, the senators were dividing up what was left of the spoils for themselves. They were not doing anything but rhetoric to the public. They were just talking, but they weren't had any way, shape, or form the idea that they were going to help the populace anymore. Although in the beginning of the Republic, certainly that was the intent, and that's what was taking place. At the end, they were just looting the little that remained. Same thing's taking place in all these other nation states. It's a very, very sad thing to watch this history repeat. And again, it's never really been on a global basis before. So we're watching something unprecedented, and how far or how hard the landing is going to be, no one really knows. I'm preparing for a fairly hard landing on this.
And one way to protect yourself against all of this fiscal craziness is silver and gold as actual currency.
Well, absolutely, and that's the financial side of things, but it goes deeper than that, as we all know. Money doesn't solve all problems. Certainly money is important, and money, for most people, represents security. So the more stable your currency is, the more stability you have. And we had fairly stable monetary systems even after coming off the gold standard in August of 1971. 70s were very precarious for a while with the huge inflation in the United States, but that was quelled after Volcker took over as Fed chairman. So you had really the 80s, 90s, and probably through 2000, those 30 years that were relatively stable, looking from this perspective where we are in 2012. But now we're getting near the end where all these fiat currencies eventually fail, and fail doesn't mean go to absolute zero. Fail means what we're seeing. In other words, you're seeing a lot of nation states settling outside of the U.S. dollar, China and Russia, for an example, China and India, for an example, and oil being purchased outside of using U.S. dollars. So all these things start to take place more and more, and what happens is the premier currency, be it the dollar now, the U.S. dollar, starts to fail more and more and more, and that's exactly what's occurring. That's exactly what happened the last time, and that's when the British pound, which was at one time the British Empire's the sun never set upon. In other words, the currency, the pound sterling, was the best and used globally. And then the U.S. dollar usurped that. It's happening again. What's going to take its place, we really don't know. But we can see clearly that the failure is at hand and it's accelerating.
We'll be right back. The Ellis Martin Report is sponsored by El Tigre Silver Corp, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol ELS.V and on the OTCQX as EGRTF. Silver has been considered a precious metal for 6,000 years and currency since 600 BC. It's been commercially mined in Mexico since 1530 in mineral-prolific and mining-friendly Sonora State, where El Tigre Silver Corp's 5,000-meter drill program is now underway. El Tigre's properties with gold and silver mining concessions span approximately 267 square miles. With an attractive share structure and a strong, proven management team, El Tigre Silver Corp is poised to identify a resource in an area that from 1903 to 1938 produced 75 million ounces of silver and 380,000 ounces of gold. Additionally, their tailing stockpile is currently progressing to production. Learn more about El Tigre Silver Corp by visiting their website, eltigresilvercorp.com, or click through El Tigre's logo on the homepage of our website, ellismartinreport.com.
We offer expert opinions only. Find them on our website. EllisMartinReport.com. That's EllisMartinReport.com.
And we're back. Without breaking up the union in the U.S., can't we have undeclared nation-states like Utah and Texas that trade in silver and gold, bypassing all that taxation and inflation and deflation and whatever we have with the current failing system?
There are alternatives. At the next Silver Summit, there'll be a gentleman talking about the AOCS, the American Open Currency System, and that's basically a barter society that anyone can join and provide service or a good using that system. I don't have it down to the specifics in great detail, but it will be provided by Robert Gray at the Silver Summit. Still legal to use silver and gold in transactions, and as you said, Utah has enacted that at law, so on a voluntary basis, any merchant and any Utah citizen can transact in gold and or silver in any transaction, again, as long as both parties agree. And so, yeah, I think you'll see a lot more of that as things unwind. So certainly you can be going about your business and not have to do any protest. Basically, you're voting with your money, or you're voting with your type of money.
And the Silver Summit is coming up in a few weeks, isn't it?
Right. It's the 25th and 26th of October.
In Spokane, Washington.
Correct.
Now, you're an expert on all things metals, mining, and money. Are you more bullish about silver or gold these days?
Still more bullish about silver. I mean, the ratio's down to about 50 to 1. We've seen it on this bull market so far, touch the 35 to 1 level. I'm looking for that level to be achieved again and beyond. In other words, I think at the top of the market you may see what I call the monetary or the classic ratio of 16 to 1, and I actually think it's going to overshoot that this time. I think we could get to a 10 to 1, which is basically what I call the natural ratio, which is roughly how much silver to gold there is in the ground. In other words, all mining activity worldwide, you get about 9 times more silver out of the ground than gold on an annual basis. So I'll just round it up to 10 to 1. So I think that's where you're going to get to at the top of the market. Now, if that's true, and I say if that's true, and no one knows, including myself, then that would suggest that silver would outperform gold 5 times to 1. In other words, if it's 50 to 1 now and the ratio gets to 10 to 1, you're going to do 5 times better buying silver than you're going to buy gold. Silver's much more volatile. It's a much smaller market, and just because I think it could get there doesn't mean that it will. But that's my analysis. I think that we're going to see silver outperform gold from this point forward. Yeah, pretty much. I think we might get back to about a 55 to 1 ratio, and then that would be about as bad as it gets. And I think from that point going forward, it will continue to favor silver.
And still buying at $34 and change?
It's really tough to say, geez, I really want everyone to buy silver at $34 plus. You know, I mean, when we got the run in 2011 and we went from 26 upward to 48, we got above the 30s. I started cautioning people in the public domain doing shows like yours, Ellis, and I said, look, be very careful here, especially about 35. This thing's going parabolic. I don't like the way the chart looks. If you need to buy silver, buy some, but don't buy all. Save some cash. Be careful, be careful, be careful. And I'd love to say I know it's going to pull back, or you can have a chance to buy it under 30, which I recommended to everybody in the public domain. And we had months and months and months where you could have. And now a lot of people are just waking up and saying, oh, yeah, I better buy it, and it's 34, and I could have bought it at 28 or 29. But regardless, yes, I don't know where else to go. And again, a lot of people do not need to have a great deal of silver or gold or both. And I do suggest both, depending on your pocketbook. A lot of people just need some protection. I mean, a 10% allocation of the precious metals is probably plenty for most people. There are silver bugs, there are gold bugs, there's people that think that the only asset class to own is the precious metals. But I don't take that view necessarily. I think that people have to make up their own mind, and sometimes there's too much of a good thing. I mean, that is an individual choice. That's nothing that I can recommend for any one person. They have to decide that for themselves.
David, once again, thank you so much for your insight. I look forward to speaking with you again in the very near future. It's always a pleasure.
Pleasure's all mine, Ellis. Thank you.
I've been speaking with metals, mining, and money expert David Morgan. David's website is themorganreport.com. Listen to this segment again on the podcast page of our website, ellismartinreport.com. This segment has been sponsored by El Tigre Silver Corp., trading on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol ELS.V and on the OTCQX as EGRTF. El Tigre Silver Corp. is focused on silver exploration and development in prolific Sonora State, Mexico. Find them on the web at eltigresilvercorp.com.